That night, my mother, Eleanor's, dining room glowed with pink and gold. She called it a family celebration, and it certainly looked the part, right down to the table groaning under platters of roasted chicken and garlic mashed potatoes. I remember thinking how perfect it all appeared. The air hummed with nervous excitement, thick with the scent of roasted chicken and garlic mashed potatoes. My daughter, Lily, sat nestled between Alex and me, her small legs swinging under the table. She was still buzzing from seeing her cousins, her navy dress with white polka dots a bright spot in the otherwise tense room. My parents had insisted we come, making a big production of it with multiple calls to confirm our attendance. Alex had questioned it, he'd seen the pattern before, the way my parents treated me differently. I'd brushed off his concerns, desperately clinging to the hope that things might finally improve. Hope, I've learned, is a strange thing. It keeps you walking into situations logic screams at you to flee. Then my father, Richard, stood at the head of the table, wine glass in hand, waiting for the room to quiet. Eleanor beamed up at him, already anticipating whatever speech he'd prepared. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," Richard announced, his voice carrying that authoritative tone perfected during his corporate years. "Eleanor and I have been blessed with 2 wonderful sons, and now we're fortunate enough to watch our family grow." My younger brother, Kevin, grinned, puffing out his chest with obvious pride. Across from us, his wife, Sarah, tried half-heartedly to correct their twin boys, 7-year-old Ethan and Caleb, who were sword-fighting with breadsticks. Lily looked up at me, her big brown eyes clouded with confusion. I squeezed her hand under the table. Richard continued, talking about legacy and bloodlines and the importance of family traditions. Every word felt calculated, pointed. He gestured broadly at the elaborate 3-tiered cake Eleanor had commissioned, covered in blue frosting with "Celebrating Our Grandsons" written across the top. I'd noticed the cake when we first arrived, prominently displayed on the sideboard, but tried to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was just for Kevin's boys. Maybe there was another cake for Lily. There wasn't. Alex's jaw tightened beside me, the tension radiating off him in waves. "Now," Richard said, his smile widening as he looked directly at Kevin and Sarah, "let's celebrate the boys who will carry on our family name. The real next generation." Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, what about me?" The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. Eleanor was already moving toward the cake, knife in hand, completely ignoring Lily's question. "Dad," I said quietly, trying to maintain some composure, "Lily is sitting right here." He waved dismissively. "She knows what I mean, sweetheart. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." Kevin shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Sarah busied herself wiping the twins' faces. Alex's hand found mine under the table, his firm grip grounding me as a familiar rage began to simmer. "Actually," I pressed, "I don't think any of us know what you mean. Could you explain?" Eleanor cut in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Darling, you're being sensitive. Your father simply meant that biological grandchildren hold a special place. You understand, don't you?" Lily was 5 years old. She understood rejection perfectly well, even if she couldn't articulate the complexity of what was happening. I watched her small shoulders hunch inward, watched the light in her eyes dim. We'd adopted Lily when she was 6 months old. The process had been lengthy and emotionally exhausting, but the moment they placed her in my arms, I'd known she was meant to be ours. Alex had tears streaming down his face. We'd both fallen completely in love. My parents had seemed supportive at first, attending the adoption finalization, bringing gifts, cooing over baby photos. But as Lily grew older, the comments started. Little digs about genetics, questions about when we'd have our own children, comparisons between Lily and Kevin's biological sons. I'd confronted them before. Each time they'd acted wounded and misunderstood, claiming I was overreacting, reading too much into innocent statements. They'd accuse me of being defensive and difficult. But this was undeniable. "Come on, everyone," Eleanor chirped, gesturing people toward the cake. "Ethan and Caleb, come get the first pieces." The twins scrambled over. Chocolate smeared across their faces. Kevin and Sarah followed, accepting plates with uncomfortable smiles. Lily stayed frozen in her seat. Richard picked up his wine glass again. "A toast," he declared. "To my grandsons, the boys who will carry our legacy forward. May they grow strong and make the family proud." That's when Alex stood. The movement was slow, deliberate. He picked up his water glass, he didn't drink alcohol, and raised it high. The entire room fell silent. Even the twins stopped their squabbling. "Actually," Alex said, his voice perfectly calm, "I'd like to make a toast of my own." My father's expression shifted from smug to wary in an instant. Alex looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. "A toast to the family we choose. To the people who show up with love instead of conditions. To those who understand that blood means nothing without respect." Eleanor's hand flew to her chest. "Alex, that's completely uncalled for." He held up a finger, silencing her. "I'm not finished. You see, I've been documenting these little moments for the past 3 years. Every dismissive comment. Every time you've excluded Lily from family photos, every birthday card you send to the real grandchildren while conveniently forgetting our daughter." Kevin's face went pale. "Oh, and I don't just have recordings," Alex continued, his tone never wavering. "Text messages, emails, voicemails, all time-stamped and saved in multiple locations, all showing a clear pattern of discrimination against a minor child." Eleanor sank into her chair. "You wouldn't dare." Alex smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Wouldn't I? See, I work in legal compliance. I know exactly how family court judges view grandparents' rights cases, and I know how poorly they respond to documented evidence of emotional mistreatment." Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is absurd. We have every right to feel how we feel about a 5-year-old child." I cut in, finding my voice. The anger that had been building for years suddenly crystallized into something sharp and useful. About an innocent little girl who's done nothing except exist. Alex pulled out his phone. "I've already consulted with an attorney. Would you like to hear what she said about your chances of maintaining any relationship with our daughter going forward?" The room erupted. Eleanor started crying loudly. Richard began blustering about rights and respect. Kevin tried to play peacemaker while Sarah gathered the twins and herded them toward the living room. Through it all, Alex stood firm. "You have 2 choices. You can apologize to Lily right now, sincerely, and commit to treating her as an equal member of this family going forward, or you can never see her again. Your call." I'd moved to Lily's side. She was staring at Alex with something like awe on her face. My husband, my wonderful, protective, brilliant husband, had just gone to war for our daughter. "This is manipulation." Richard sputtered. "You can't seriously expect us to." "Goodbye then," Alex said simply. He picked up Lily, settling her on his hip. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. "We're leaving." I grabbed my purse, adrenaline flooding my system. We were halfway to the door when Eleanor's voice rang out. "Wait! Please wait!" We turned. She was standing now, mascara running down her face in dark streaks. Richard stood behind her, his expression stormy but defeated. "We'll do better," Eleanor said, her voice cracking. "Please don't take her away. We'll apologize." Alex looked at me. The decision was mine to make. I thought about all the times I'd excused their behavior. All the moments I'd convinced myself things weren't that bad. All the years I'd let my daughter experience the same rejection I'd felt growing up whenever I didn't meet their impossible standards. "Apologize to Lily," I said coldly. "Not to us, to her." They approached slowly, like they were walking toward a firing squad. Richard crouched down to Lily's level, though she remained in Alex's arms. Lily, he began, and I could hear the effort it took him to get the words out. I'm sorry for what I said. You are my grandchild. I was wrong. Eleanor nodded frantically. We love you so much, sweetheart. We're so sorry we hurt your feelings. Lily looked at them solemnly, then turned to Alex. Can we go home now, Daddy? Alex kissed the top of her head. Yeah, princess. We can go home. We left without another word. The drive home was quiet. Lily fell asleep in her car seat almost immediately, exhausted from the emotional upheaval. Alex and I didn't speak until we carried her inside and tucked her into bed. In our own room, I finally broke down. Alex held me while I sobbed against his chest, years of frustration and hurt pouring out. I should have done something sooner, I gasped between tears. I should have protected her better. Hey, Alex said softly, tilting my face up to look at him. You've been protecting her. You've been fighting this battle for years. Tonight was just the first time they couldn't pretend not to see it. I wiped my eyes. That speech. When did you plan that? He pulled out his phone and showed me a folder full of screenshots, recordings, and documented incidents. The level of detail was staggering. I've been collecting evidence since the first Christmas when they gave me a gift card while the twins got actual presents. I knew eventually we'd need it. I scrolled through the files, my stomach twisting with each entry. There were screenshots of text messages from Eleanor asking if we were planning to have biological children soon. Voice recordings from last Thanksgiving when Richard had commented loudly that Ethan and Caleb had the family nose, glancing dismissively at Lily. Photos from Easter where my parents had coordinated matching outfits for the twins but conveniently forgotten to include Lily in the plans. Alex, this is years' worth of documentation, I whispered, stunned by the sheer volume. 2 years and 4 months, he confirmed. I started keeping records after that incident at the zoo. I remembered that day viscerally. We'd all gone together, my parents, Kevin's family, and us. The twins had begged to ride the carousel, and Richard had handed them each a $20 bill for tickets and souvenirs. Lily had reached up expectantly, her small hand outstretched, but he'd already turned away. The rejection on her 2-year-old face had shattered something inside me. You never told me you were doing this, I said, still processing. Alex sat beside me on the bed, taking my hands in his. I didn't want to make things worse between you and your parents unless absolutely necessary. I kept hoping they'd change on their own, but I also needed insurance, something concrete if the situation escalated. Tonight proved I was right to prepare. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake replaying the evening, analyzing every moment. Part of me felt guilty for the confrontation. These were my parents, the people who'd raised me, who had been there for every milestone of my own childhood. But another part, the mother part, burned with righteous fury at how they treated my daughter. Around 2 a.m, I got up and checked on Lily. She was curled around her stuffed elephant, peaceful in sleep. I brushed her hair back gently, studying her features. She had my smile, people said, though there was no genetic connection. She'd simply learned it from watching me. Her laugh was entirely her own, bright and infectious. Her curiosity about the world reminded me of Alex's analytical mind. She was ours in every way that mattered. I thought about my own childhood, growing up as the oldest and only daughter. Kevin had always been the golden child, the son Richard had wanted to mold in his image. I'd spent years trying to earn the same approval, the same unconditional pride. Even now, at 32 years old, I could feel that desperate need for validation lurking beneath my anger. But Lily wouldn't grow up like that. I'd make sure of it. The next morning arrived too soon. Lily woke up subdued, quieter than usual. She picked at her blueberry pancakes, normally her favorite, and didn't ask about seeing her cousins like she typically did on weekends. Hey, Bug, I said softly, using Alex's nickname for her. Are you okay? She shrugged, pushing a blueberry around her plate with her fork. "Grandpa doesn't like me." The words hit like a physical blow. Alex's jaw tightened and I saw him grip the edge of the counter. "That's not true," I started, but Lily interrupted. "He said the cake was for real grandkids." "I'm not a real grandkid." Her voice was matter-of-fact, which somehow made it worse. She'd accepted it as truth. Alex crouched down beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. "Listen to me, Lily. You are absolutely a real grandkid. Grandpa said something very wrong last night, and that's why we left. He made a mistake, a big one. But I'm adopted," Lily said the word carefully in her mouth. "That means I didn't come from Mommy's tummy like Ethan and Caleb came from Aunt Sarah's." We'd always been honest with Lily about her adoption. We'd read her age-appropriate books about different family structures and celebrated her adoption day every year alongside her birthday. But hearing her use it as evidence of why she was less than her cousins made my heart crack. "You're right. You grew in a different mommy's tummy," I said, kneeling beside Alex. "But you grew in my heart from the very first moment I saw you. That makes you just as much my daughter as if I carried you myself." "Then why doesn't Grandpa think so?" It was a fair question, one I didn't have a good answer for. How do you explain prejudice to a 5-year-old? How do you help them understand that sometimes people's limitations have nothing to do with the child's worth? "Sometimes grown-ups have wrong ideas in their heads," Alex explained. "And those wrong ideas make them say hurtful things. But Daddy's not going to let anyone hurt you like that. Okay? Not even Grandpa." Lily nodded slowly, then returned to her pancakes with slightly more interest. "Kids are resilient in ways that constantly amaze me, bouncing back from wounds that would floor adults." After breakfast, my phone started buzzing. I'd left it in the bedroom deliberately, wanting to focus on Lily first, but eventually I had to face the fallout. Kevin called first, apologizing for not speaking up. He admitted he'd noticed the differential treatment, but hadn't wanted to cause waves. Sarah sent a long text about how uncomfortable she'd felt, but didn't know how to address it. Kevin's call came while I was still staring at the screen, trying to process everything. "I'm so sorry," Kevin said immediately. "I should have said something years ago. I didn't want to believe Mom and Dad were actually doing what it looked like they were doing." "But you saw it," I said flatly. "You knew. And you stayed quiet." "Yeah." He exhaled heavily. "I was a coward. Sarah's been on my case about it for months. She wanted me to talk to them, but I kept making excuses. Kept telling myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. It was worse, Kevin. It was so much worse." My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. "Do you have any idea what it's like watching your child realize she's not wanted? Not valued?" "I can't imagine," he said quietly. "But I saw Lily's face last night. I saw what Dad's comment did to her. There's no excuse for my silence." I wanted to be angrier with him, but exhaustion dulled the edge. Amanda said she felt uncomfortable. "Why didn't either of you push back?" "Because they're parents, and pushing back against them has never been easy. You know how Dad gets. That whole 'I'm the patriarch' thing he does. And Mom just enables him." But Alex was right to do what he did. Someone needed to force the issue. Sarah's text was longer and more detailed. She described specific incidents I hadn't even noticed. Times when Eleanor had deliberately positioned Ethan and Caleb in the center of family photos while nudging Lily to the edge. Moments when Richard had asked the twins about their interests and ambitions while barely acknowledging Lily's presence. Gift-giving occasions where the disparity in thought and expense was glaring. "I wanted to say something so many times," Sarah had written, but Kevin kept saying it wasn't our place. "I'm sorry I didn't fight harder. Lily deserves better, and you deserve better." My parents' messages were more complicated. Eleanor sent a series of increasingly desperate texts about how they'd been misunderstood. Richard left a voicemail that started defensive and gradually shifted toward something resembling genuine remorse. "You have to understand," Eleanor's first text read, "we never meant to hurt Lily. We love her. We've always loved her." The second came 10 minutes later. "Your father didn't mean what it sounded like. He was just trying to acknowledge Kevin's boys. You're being too sensitive about this." The third, another 15 minutes after that. "Please call me. We need to talk about this like adults. You can't just cut us off over a misunderstanding." By the eighth text, the tone had shifted entirely. "I've been crying all night. Your father is devastated. We don't understand why you're punishing us like this. All we wanted was a nice family dinner." Richard's voicemail was harder to listen to. His voice had that quality it always got when he'd been drinking, slightly slurred, more emotional than usual. "I don't appreciate how you and Alex embarrassed us in front of the family," he began. "We opened our home to you, prepared a meal, tried to do something special, and you threw it back in our faces. That's not how we raised you." There was a long pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "But maybe I could have worded things better, with the cake and everything. I didn't think about how it might sound to Lily. She's a good kid, you know. I think she's a good kid. I just..." Another pause. "Call me back. Let's talk about this." I played the voicemail for Alex later that afternoon. He listened without expression, then handed the phone back. "Classic non-apology," he said. "Notice how he focuses on his feelings, his embarrassment, his intent. Nothing about the actual harm caused." He admitted he could have worded things better, I pointed out, though even as I said it, I knew it was inadequate. Yeah, he could have worded things better. Not "I was wrong." Not "I hurt my granddaughter." Not "I've been treating Lily differently and that's unacceptable." Alex shook his head. He's sorry he got called out, not sorry for what he did. Deep down, I knew he was right. This was the pattern I'd seen my entire life. My father making mistakes, offering the bare minimum acknowledgement, then expecting everyone to move on without any real change or accountability. Over the next few days, I watched more messages accumulate. My Aunt Carol, Eleanor's sister, sent a lengthy email describing her own observations of the family dynamics. She'd noticed the favoritism, too, but had assumed I was handling it privately. She offered to mediate if needed, though she acknowledged she should have intervened sooner. Several family friends reached out, having apparently heard about the incident through the grapevine. Some offered support. Others suggested I was overreacting, that family disagreements should stay private, that I was damaging Lily by creating conflict. Those messages stung in a different way. The implication that protecting my daughter from emotional harm was somehow more damaging than allowing the harm to continue made me furious. "People always want to protect the status quo," Alex observed when I showed him some of the responses. "It's easier to pressure the victim to accept mistreatment than to pressure the perpetrator to change." Lily, meanwhile, seemed to process the evening in her own way. She played more quietly than usual, spent longer periods drawing in her sketchbook. When I asked what she was drawing, she showed me pictures of our immediate family, her, Alex, and me, surrounded by hearts and flowers. "This is my real family," she said simply. The statement broke my heart and filled it simultaneously. She found her security in US, which was exactly what should happen. But I hated that she needed to make that distinction. Needed to separate real family from the extended relatives who'd failed her. A week passed before I finally responded to any of my parents' messages. I called Eleanor on a Tuesday morning after Alex had taken Lily to kindergarten. "Thank goodness." Eleanor answered on the first ring. "I've been so worried. Your father and I have barely slept." I needed time to think, I said carefully. Time to figure out what comes next. "What comes next is you forgive us for this silly misunderstanding and we move forward," she said, that familiar edge of desperation creeping into her voice. "We're a family. Family forgives each other." "Mom, this wasn't a misunderstanding. Dad explicitly said the cake was for the real grandkids. There's no ambiguity there. He didn't mean it the way it sounded." "Then how did he mean it?" I pressed, because from where Lily was sitting, from where I was sitting, it sounded like he was saying she doesn't count as a real member of this family. Silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing. Could almost see her struggling to find the right words that would make this go away without requiring actual accountability. "Your father struggles with the adoption," she finally admitted. "He's old-fashioned. He believes in bloodlines and genetics. I've tried to tell him it doesn't matter, but you know how stubborn he is." "So, you've known this entire time that he has a problem with Lily being adopted, and you did nothing?" "I did do something. I've been working on him, trying to change his mind. These things take time." "Lily doesn't have time, Mom. She's 5 years old. Every day she experiences this rejection is another day of damage to her sense of self-worth." I was pacing now, unable to sit still. "And you've been enabling him, making excuses, asking me to be patient while my daughter suffers. That's not fair." Eleanor protested. "I love Lily. I've always tried to include her. Trying isn't enough. Either she's your granddaughter or she isn't. There's no middle ground here." More silence. Then quietly, "What do you want from us?" It was the first real question she'd asked. The first indication that she understood something fundamental needed to change. "I want you and Dad to go to therapy," I said. "Individual and couples therapy with someone who specializes in adoption issues and family dynamics. I want you to confront your biases and figure out why you've been treating Lily differently." "Therapy? That seems extreme." "What's extreme is telling a 5-year-old she's not a real grandchild," I shot back. "What's extreme is years of documented favoritism. What's extreme is making my daughter feel unwanted in her own family. We never meant, intent doesn't matter, Mom. Impact does. And the impact has been devastating." I took a breath, steeling myself. "If you want any relationship with Lily going forward, you'll do the therapy, both of you. Non-negotiable." "I'll talk to your father," she said finally. "But I can't promise he'll agree." "Then I guess he won't see his granddaughter anymore," I replied. "His choice." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, processing the conversation. Part of me felt guilty for issuing ultimatums. Another part felt empowered for finally drawing a firm boundary. Alex found me there when he returned from dropping off Lily. He didn't ask what happened. He just made tea and sat beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. "I told them they need therapy or they don't see Lily," I said eventually. "Good," Alex replied simply. "Is it though? Am I being too harsh?" He turned to face me fully. "Think about what you're really asking. You're asking them to examine their behavior and commit to change. That's not harsh. That's the bare minimum requirement for being in Lily's life. They're your parents, and Lily is your daughter. She comes first, always." He squeezed my hand. "Besides, therapy isn't punishment. It's an opportunity for them to actually fix this, to build something healthier. You're giving them a chance." 3 days later, Eleanor called back. "We've scheduled appointments," she said, sounding tired. "Your father wasn't happy about it, but he's agreed to go." I didn't respond to any of them immediately. Instead, Alex and I took Lily out for pancakes at her favorite diner. We let her order chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream. We played silly games and made her laugh. We reminded her that she was loved completely and unconditionally. Over the following weeks, my parents tried various approaches to repair the damage. They sent gifts which we returned. They showed up at our house unannounced, which resulted in Alex politely but firmly turning them away. They called mutual family members to plead their case, which backfired when several relatives admitted they'd noticed the favoritism, too. Finally, 6 weeks after the disastrous dinner, they requested a formal meeting with a family therapist present. Alex and I discussed it extensively before agreeing. The therapy sessions were brutal. Dr. Vivian Hayes didn't let anyone off easy. She made my parents articulate exactly what they'd done wrong and why it was harmful. She made them confront their biases about adoption and biological versus chosen family. She held up a mirror to their behavior and they didn't like what they saw. But slowly, painstakingly, things began to shift. It started with a letter Richard wrote to Lily. He didn't make excuses. He acknowledged that he'd hurt her and explained that he was working to change. He told her that she deserved better from her grandparents. Eleanor followed with her own letter along with a photo album. She'd gone through years of pictures and created a book just for Lily full of moments they'd shared, swimming lessons, zoo trips, art projects, evidence that love had existed even when they'd struggled to express it properly. Dr. Hayes helped us establish boundaries. My parents weren't allowed unsupervised time with Lily until they completed at least 12 sessions. All interactions would be documented and discussed in therapy. They had to actively work to treat all their grandchildren equally with specific examples and check-ins. The first supervised visit happened at a neutral location, a park playground, where Lily could escape to the swings if things got uncomfortable. My parents brought a picnic and sat awkwardly on a blanket while Lily eyed them with suspicion. "I brought your favorite cookies," Eleanor offered tentatively. "The oatmeal ones with raisins." Lily climbed onto the swing instead. Alex gave her a push while I stayed close to my parents, ready to intervene if necessary. Richard cleared his throat. "Your mother told me you're learning to read now." "That's wonderful." "I can read chapter books," Lily announced, her voice carrying across the playground. "Daddy reads me one every night before bed." "Maybe Grandpa could read you one sometime," Eleanor suggested. "If that would be okay with you." Lily considered this, pumping her legs to swing higher. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. Kevin and Sarah made their own efforts to bridge the gap. They started including Lily in the twins' birthday celebrations. Sarah sent me thoughtful messages, checking in on how we were doing. Kevin pulled Richard aside during one family gathering and told him point-blank that the favoritism needed to end permanently. The real turning point came 4 months later at Lily's 6th birthday party. We'd kept it small, just close friends and immediate family. My parents arrived early, carrying an elaborately wrapped present. Lily opened it carefully, pulling out a beautiful necklace with a small pendant shaped like a heart. Inside was a picture of the entire family, including her prominently in the center. "We had it custom-made," Richard said, his voice rough with emotion. "Because you're the heart of our family, Lily. We forgot that for a while, but we won't forget again." Lily looked at the necklace, then at her grandparents. Something shifted in her expression, a cautious softening. "Thank you," she said quietly. Later, while Lily played with her friends, Eleanor pulled me aside. "I know we have so much more work to do," she said. "I know you have every right to never trust us again, but I want you to know I see it now. The damage we caused, the pain we inflicted. I didn't make it easy for her. Words are simple, Mom. Consistency is what matters." "I know," she agreed. "Which is why I'm asking you to hold us accountable. If we slip, if we fall back into old patterns, I want you to call us out immediately. No more excuses, no more defensiveness." Over the next year, they proved their commitment. They showed up to Lily's dance recital with the same enthusiasm they brought to the twins' baseball games. They sent birthday cards to all 3 grandchildren with equal care and attention. They stopped making comments about biology and genetics. Most importantly, they listened when Lily talked. They asked about her day, her friends, her dreams. They treated her like she mattered, because she did. The relationship between my parents and our family would never be exactly what I'd once hoped for. Trust once broken that completely leaves scars. But we built something new on the ruins of what had been destroyed. Something more honest, more intentional, and ultimately stronger. Alex never deleted the evidence he'd collected. He kept it stored securely, just in case. But as months turned into years, we needed it less and less. Lily grew from a cautious 6-year-old into a confident, vibrant 8-year-old who knew her worth. She understood that family was defined by love and action, not just blood. She recognized that people could change if they were willing to do the hard work. And she knew without question that her parents would always protect her. On Lily's 8th birthday, we had another family celebration. This time, when Eleanor brought out the cake, it read, "Happy Birthday, Lily," in bright purple frosting, her favorite color. The design featured butterflies and flowers, all the things Lily loved. Richard raised his glass for a toast. "To Lily," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "Our beautiful, smart, incredible granddaughter. May this year bring you joy and adventure." Lily grinned, her whole face lighting up. "Thanks, Grandpa." Alex squeezed my hand under the table. I looked at my husband, this man who'd stood up when it mattered most, who'd refused to let our daughter be diminished. Sometimes love means fighting. Sometimes it means drawing hard lines and enforcing boundaries. Sometimes it means being willing to walk away completely. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means watching people choose to change because they realize what they stand to lose. The cake was delicious. Everyone agreed. But the sweetest part wasn't the frosting or the filling. It was watching my daughter celebrate, surrounded by people who finally, genuinely saw her for the gift she was. She'd always been the real grandkid. She'd always been enough. It had just taken far too long for some people to recognize the truth that Alex and I had known from the moment we first held her. Family isn't about genetics. It's about showing up. It's about fighting for each other. It's about refusing to accept anything less than complete, unconditional love. That night after the party ended and the guests went home, Lily came into our room wearing her favorite pajamas. "Daddy, Mommy," she said softly. We both looked up. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked. She climbed onto the bed between us, snuggling close. "Thank you for always picking me." Alex and I exchanged glances over her head, both fighting back tears. "Always," Alex promised, kissing her forehead. "Every single time." "Forever," I added, wrapping my arms around them both. Because that's what real family does. They choose each other every day, no matter what. They protect each other. They fight for each other. And they never, ever let anyone make their loved ones feel less than they are. The cake had been for all the grandkids that night. But the real celebration was watching my daughter finally feel what she'd always deserved, completely and unquestionably loved. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what lines you'd draw for the people you love most?